Okay, welcome back. We're going to get far this time. Now look what's going on here. Here's our picture of our economy. I know it looks like an algebraic equation and everything, but that's not a big problem. Don't worry about that. This is how much the economy is growing, what it's like, what's going on in the economy. Is this a big number or a small number? What's going on? This is the income or gross domestic product measure, right? This stuff over here, this chunk of stuff here is talking about consumers. What are consumers doing? How much are they buying? What are they contributing to this economy? This here is businesses and this is the government. What part of this economy is driven by business investment? Remember, that means like buying machines and computers and things, not stocks and bonds. And this is what's the government spending and how's that contributing to the economy? Now remember, this is consumers. That's a big part. That's almost 70% of the economy, and this stuff's the other. But let's move on. Okay, what does this consumer do? What is this B? Well, actually, B is called the marginal propensity to consume. That's how much are we likely to spend of our income. Now, B is usually about 0.9 or 90%, so we spend about 90% of our income, even more than that sometimes. But that gives us an idea of what goes on in terms of how the income affects consumer spending. A is that autonomous part of consumer spending that doesn't have to do with income. Okay, so this is the equation. Well, what do we do with it? Now remember, we're trying to use words, not just a math problem here. Let's say, how would we like to answer a question like, what happens if the government increases spending? What's going to happen to the economy over here? So if we increase government spending by, we'll say, $200 billion, what's going to happen to Y? You might say, oh, Y is going to increase 200 billion. But that's wrong. Look at the equation here. Look at, there's a Y here and a Y here. So there's something funny going on. You can't just increase this by 200 and that goes up by 200 because we've got this Y over here. It doesn't really make sense mathematically, and just looking at it. You can't just say that goes up 200, so that goes up 200, so that goes up. That doesn't work that way. That's not the way it's going to work. So we've got to figure something out. And mathematically, what you do is you say, if you want to answer the question, if G spends more money, what happens to Y? You want to get all your Y's on one side of the equation. And that's what we're going to do now. This is the first big step here. Y, that's this Y here. And now let's get rid of this Y here. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract BY from this side. So plus BY minus BY. So they just cancel out, don't they? But we've got to subtract it from this side of the equation. Minus BY equals, and what are we left with? Little a, that's that consumer part, plus business spending, plus government spending. Okay, so if we increase G by a certain amount, what's going to happen to Y? We're getting closer. We can see something's going to happen to these Y's, but it's still a little confusing. It takes some pretty brainy people to kind of figure out what happens if 200 goes up here. Well, let's see. Let's get the Y out of this phrase. So out of this part of the equation, we go Y 1 minus B equals A plus I plus G. We're getting really close now because look, we've isolated the Y. We've simply taken it out of here. Y times 1 is Y. Y times negative B is YB. So we get that. Okay. Now we want to isolate the Y some more. So we're just going to put the Y again on this side of the equation equals. How are we going to do this? If we multiply this times 1 over 1 minus B, then these things cancel out and we end up with Y. So that's going to work. So let's multiply this side by 1 over 1 minus B times all of this stuff, A plus I plus G. And there we go. Now we've got an equation that can help us answer what happens if we increase G by 200. What happens to this Y? Now we see right here, look at this. If we increase G by 200, something pretty spectacular is going to happen, right? Because G is going to go up by 200, and what's going to happen to Y? Well, it doesn't just go up by 200, it goes up by 200 times this thing. This thing is called the multiplier. And this is a big player in the Keynesian approach to the economy, because when G goes up by 200, it goes up by more than just 200 over here on this side. It goes up by 200 times 1 over 1 minus B. We'll talk about that next time when we wrap this up, aggregate expenditures algebra problem. See you then.